So how did I come to the point where I made the decision to start a business? So I'd say around 2014, I had been working in the world of pharmaceuticals and pharmaceutical sales for probably around 10 to 11 years. I had made a very solid career, and frankly, I probably would have worked in pharmaceuticals for the rest of my life. I enjoyed it. I was very successful at it. I had climbed the ranks, I had climbed the ladder. I started off as territory rep and went from territory rep to specialty rep, from specialty rep to regional sales trainer, from regional sales trainer to district manager, and I was good. I was very good. I was always in the top 10% of the sales force in terms of sales. I was an exemplary employee, but the company that I was working for, roughly around 2014, had gotten acquired by a much larger generic drug maker, and there was redundancies, and I would say hundreds, if not thousands of us lost our jobs. So at that moment, I was kind of faced with a decision, and that decision was, do I go out and get another job in pharmaceuticals, which probably would have been very easy. I had a very lofty resume in the world of pharmaceuticals, or do I start a business? And it was this nagging feeling inside of me that this was my opportunity. So I was faced with a decision. That decision, go back into the world of pharmaceuticals, which to me was the easy way out, or challenge yourself and start a business. Now, keeping in mind, I had zero experience in the world of business ownership or starting your own business. So to go ahead and make the decision to start a business was perhaps the most risky decision that I've ever made in my life. Talking about my family situation at the time, my wife Noelle and I had just had our second child, Alexander. My wife had a son from a previous marriage, Joseph, and Alexander was an infant when I got fired from my position at that pharmaceutical company. And we decided as a family to move from New York City, where we're living in Manhattan, to South Florida. And we did so without me, the primary breadwinner, pretty much having any income at all. Decided to leave it all behind and to start new in Florida. My wife, who is a highly successful business owner, left her business that was predominantly in New York City. By the way, my wife is a very successful interior designer, but she decided to leave her interior design business and transport it from New York City to South Florida. And that in and of itself is not easy. So what we did was my wife got a job within another design firm just so that we would have some income. And I embarked on the world of business ownership. And from pretty much all of 2015, it was me embarking on starting a business while my wife, who I'm forever grateful to, carried our entire family. Now keep in mind, she was making like $50,000 or $60,000 a year caring for our entire family. Why did I start a business? So why did I start a business? So I think, one of the major reasons why I started a business was because, growing up, I was a very competitive person. I mean, I'm the youngest of 7. I have 1 biological brother and 2 stepbrothers and 3 stepsisters. And I have 2 older brothers that are very close in age to me, 2 years older than me. And it was always the 3 of us. And I was the youngest, and I was always fighting for something. I was fighting to keep up. I was fighting in sports against them. I was fighting for food. I was just fighting for everything. And not that we were poor or anything like that. I'm not saying that I was fighting for scraps of food, but I'm just saying that I was the last to kind of get things. And I was always fighting for something. And I took that into my athletic career because I had played soccer at a very high level, at a very competitive level. And, I always had this competitive nature about me. I had this edge inside of me. And I think one of the major reasons why I started a business was the test, like the test of oneself, the test of my ability to see if I could do it. Did I have the competency? Did I have the skill sets? Did I have the intestinal fortitude? So the chronology of my business was, very interesting, very challenging. So all of 2015 was me basically expending money. So I had come away from being fired at my previous job with a large severance package and stock options, and I was sitting on a decent amount of money for someone that just got fired, and I was grateful for that money. And at that point, if I decided to start a business, which obviously I did, it was going to be me taking all this money basically that I had just gotten from severance and stock options and expending that very quickly in an effort to get a business up and running. So the business that I started was a franchise business, of which I had to give them, the franchisor, basically roughly $50,000 to $60,000. I forget exactly what the number was, but it was roughly $50,000 to $60,000. So almost instantaneously, the money that I had come away with from being fired was expended like that. Not to mention, it was a requirement to have a retail location. So I got a retail location. I had to fix that retail location up. I had to get furniture for that retail location. I had to hire employees. I had to get business licenses to specifically work in the field that I was working in. And the list goes on and on and on. So all of 2015 was me expending the money that I had just come away with, having worked for a pharmaceutical company and gotten fired. And as you're doing this, as you're expending this money, there is a palpable fear that is coming through you. Marry that or couple that with moving from New York City to South Florida, putting all of the financial responsibility on my wife's shoulders, which is very emasculating and challenging, although my wife took it on like an absolute champion. And I think about it today, what she did for our family and what she did so that I could follow my dream of business ownership is just unheard of in this day and age. I mean, there's so many selfish people in the world, and she was completely and utterly unselfish. And so she took that onto her shoulders, becoming the breadwinner for our family. And not only am I forever grateful, it just added to the pressure. It added to the pressure. Bringing us to 2016, where finally, after having put it all together, expended, probably $160,000 in that range, the doors open. And now I'm running a business. And my goodness, people have no idea the challenges that come with that. So largely, I basically drained my bank account to follow this dream of business ownership, this nagging feeling that I had inside of myself to test myself, to see if in fact I was capable and competent to do something that was hard and challenging and difficult and fraught with risk, but also had great opportunity. And I'm a glasses half full type person, and I was always looking at it as a glasses half full type situation. I felt that I had the ability to get it done. But when I opened my doors in 2016, it became apparent very quickly that this was going to be a very hard task, a very hard endeavor, in fact. And I think back and I think back and I understand now, because I look at that first year. Total revenue for my business was $128,000. Total revenue, $128,000, which means basically that I lost money. Think about this. Half of that goes directly to employees, external employees. Because of what I did, there was external employees. 10% of that goes to vendors. 10% of that goes to internal employees, 10% of that goes to utilities, and so forth and so on. And it was just, after 1 year, a losing endeavor. And I was watching my operational funds in the business slowly diminish, slowly diminish. There were many sleepless nights, many nights that I just laid awake in that bed wondering, will this ever turn? Did I get myself in too deep? But slowly but surely, I was able to start to turn it around. And as we approached 2017, I started to see a little bit of a change. I focused day in and day out on controlling the things that I can control, to providing the excellent service that I knew I could provide, customer service, quality of the product, and so forth and so on. And in 2017, we went from 128,000 in revenue to almost 900,000 in revenue. And all of a sudden, this fear that I woke up with every morning, this fear that I went to bed with every night, this unbelievable amount of responsibility that I've hoisted upon my wife's shoulders started to slowly diminish and go away. And I started to almost like a snowball or a boulder that's being pushed up a hill. I got to the peak of that hill, and now it was going down the other side, and there was momentum. There was momentum to this business that I had started. And in 2018, we went from 900 in revenue in 2007, 900K in revenue, to 1.5, 1.6 million in revenue. 2019, 2.1 million in revenue. And it was as if the rain and the storm clouds were parting, and all of a sudden the fear that I felt and the sleeplessness, the anxiety all started to dissipate. And I was able to finally take my wife to dinner. I was able to finally buy my children a toy. But let me just tell you that people who are in the process of starting a business, there is simply nothing easy about it. My family suffered immeasurably. So if you ask me the question, how did this affect your family? How did this affect your marriage? There were many moments where my wife and I almost threw in the towel, because I had embarked on this dream, I had embarked on this journey, and I struggled, I fought, I scratched, I clawed, and she saw me going through it. She went through it with me and supported me while I was going through it, and supported this family while I was going through it. So we went through it as a family. It wasn't just me. We went through it as a family. We suffered. I could remember to this day my children asking me for a quarter to get a gumball, and we would say, no, I'm sorry. I remember wanting to take my wife out to dinner. We could not go out to dinner. I mean, sacrifice after sacrifice, to the point where you start to see this momentum building, and it's building and building and building, and all of a sudden the momentum starts to come onto your team. It's on your side, and you start to win. And wow, what a feeling. Just thinking about it now is something that really kind of gets my passions going inside, my emotions going. So was there a moment in which I kind of started to know, okay, wow, I now have a successful business? So I'll never forget, I mean, we had gotten to the point where we bought a very modest home in Boca Raton, Florida, like a 3-bedroom, very modest, middle-class home. And it was really our first home that we bought as a family here in Florida. And my wife asked me to meet her at the mall, and we were looking to do closets. We were looking to upgrade the closets in our home that had like wire kind of hangers, if you will. And we wanted to do built-in closets. And we were in like the Container Store or something to that effect, where they could, see the dimensions of what your closet is and then do built-in closet schematics on the computer. And I asked, what's the price of this? And they said the price is X amount of dollars. And it was a substantial amount of money. And I said in my head, I could do that. I could do that. and a little switch went off in my head. Wow, you now have a successful business, because I had money that I never thought that I would have. I had been fighting for so long. I had been struggling for so long. But in that moment, sitting in the mall in Boca Raton at the Container Store, I now knew that I had a successful business, because someone threw a number at me and I said to myself, I can absolutely do that. And I remember that my wife had joy in her body language, in her countenance, and my mother-in-law was there, and the idea that I could just say, sure, let's do that, was almost like a foreign concept, because for so many years it was like, no, we can't do that. No, we can't afford that. No, that's too much money. No, you can't have that toy. No, we can't get that type of car. And now those no's were able to start to turn to yeses. And what an uplifting epiphany that I had in that moment, where I now knew that I had a successful business. So in terms of the chronology, this kind of takes us to 2020, where I had built the business up to such a point where thankfully we had a comfortable life at this point, and the franchisor that I was a franchisee of had approached me and asked to purchase my business. And wow, what a feeling that one gets when something that they created. I mean, when I think about what I created, I literally painted the walls in my retail location. I literally stained the doors. I set up every computer. I got every single client. I served those clients, and I had the help along the way of many employees. But when I think back to what it was that I achieved and what it was that I accomplished and how that makes me feel, pride is not even the word. Pride falls short. The word pride falls short of what it feels like to have achieved something, to have grown something, to build something with your own hands. And in 2020, the franchisor approached me to purchase the business. We negotiated, and I sold the business for a substantial amount of money. And wow, what a joy that I'm able to now serve my family in the way that they served me for so many years. I'm able to serve my family in the way they served me. I'm able to provide for my wife the way she provided for me and the boys. And what an amazing sense of pride that is, to know that you've built something and that you have a proud family behind you that watched you do it. They watched you suffer. They went up and down on the roller coaster of business ownership with you, and they've watched you fail. They've watched you take steps on uneven ground, but they've also seen you get ahead. They've seen you have successes and ultimately build something special that no one will ever be able to take away, that you've done that. You've done something that few people are able to do. So when I think about business ownership and kind of what that means to me, what it means to me is challenge. It's a challenge that I'm ever so glad that I took, and I'll tell you why I'm so happy that I took it. Because so many of the fears that I had, so many of the challenges that seemed so overwhelming when I was embarking on this process or going through this process, they no longer seem like challenges. I'm no longer scared. I no longer have this fear inside of me. That fear, that the idea of challenges, it's now turned to empowerment. And it's turned to empowerment and confidence and this internal knowing in my gut that I could do this. I could do this again and again and again. And I've now kind of transferred what I've learned in my first business to other businesses. And but it's only something that you can gain having gone through it. And I don't advocate anyone to do it unless they are willing to go through the fire. If you are not willing to go through the fire, if you don't believe in yourself, if you're not willing to bet on yourself, it is not for you. I took a bet on myself. It was the riskiest bet I ever took in my life. And I'm so glad that I did, because it paid off, and it paid off handsomely. Not with money per se, although the money came with it, but with the knowing that I can overcome challenges that I never knew that I could, or rather that I thought that I could, but I had never done it. And now that I've done it, it's forever embedded in my soul that I'm capable and competent enough to do this with any business.